Okay, so we're recording. Okay, so hello and welcome everyone. I've just started the recording for our night. This is September. God, I wish it was September. This year just is flying. It's June the 29th of 2026, and we're having the Capricorn full moon. And interestingly enough, when we get to July 1st, these years have gone. I don't know how 2026 has flown this fast, but it certainly has. It's crazy. I never dreamed in a million years that we would be going this fast. And some people talk about, when they're older, they say, well, just wait till you get older, and it's like then you're going to be flying. And it does. As we do get older, most of everybody on the call are older than I am. I'm 58, but there's still something that's different about the way the energy is working right now. And part of that, I think, is the way that, some of the people are talking about the astrological configurations of what's happening energetically. And I don't know how many of you, I asked a couple of this earlier when we got on the call earlier, but some of you that just logged on. I don't know how many of you have had a chance to check the video that I had sent in the text. It's an interview by Emilio Ortiz. He's really a very wide open soul. He does a lot of interviews with people that are more forward thinking and big cosmic picture world. But it was an interview with Rick Levine, and I haven't even had a chance to see it. I did log in a little earlier and caught the first few moments of it. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna play just a part of it because I can't articulate this the way that Rick did. So hold on. Where is it? Okay.
This conjunction of Saturn and Neptune, let's be clear. Although this conjunction that you are referring to was exact on February 20th of 2026, actually the day we last saw each other in Los Angeles. Actually, I think it was the day before we saw each other in Los Angeles. Regardless, now that was several months ago, February, March, April, May, June, it was almost a third of a year ago. We are still living in that conjunction space because these slow-moving cycles that take 36 years to repeat really have about 6 months to a year to even sometimes 2, 3, 4, 5 years of it unfolding. Just like after a new moon, it takes a day or even a week after that new moon to kind of really see what it is that's coming into being. And so we should be careful about making the mistake of, that Saturn-Neptune conjunction is over and we got through it. No, we're still moving through it. And also, as long as we're talking about that conjunction, we should also be very clear. Although that conjunction occurs every 36 years and can be tracked back like clockwork over the last, let's say, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 centuries, where we have good recorded history, where we can see civilization dealing with realities crumbling or with new dreams taking over from previous realities. The fact of the matter is that this was not a 1 in 36 year conjunction. This is a 1 in some 6,000 year conjunction, because in astrology, the 0 point of Aries, which is not only the beginning of the zodiac as we astrologers use it, but it is actually considered to be the world point, because it defines the relationship between the Earth and the outer sphere of stars at the first moment of the equinox, of the spring equinox in the northern hemisphere. And the last time that a Saturn-Neptune conjunction occurred at this most progenerative spot spot of creation in the astrological cycle. The last time that occurred was about 4300 BCE. So it is a huge transition that's not even about this year, this cycle, the last decade or two, or the next decade or two. If we look back to that last conjunction in 43, I think it was 4361. I don't have the date in front of me, so I may not be exactly accurate there. But the last time that occurred, that was right at the turning point of what we define as Neolithic to modern man. You know, it was the beginning of agriculture, city-states, the use of metals, all these things that define, you know, humanity as to what it is today, even though in the past few hundred years with the industrial revolutions and the digital revolution and the use of invisible, hyper sensible, and I use that word exactly correct, hypersensible phenomena, meaning being able to sense or perceive vibrations in the electromagnetic spectrum that is beyond our ability of sight or touch or smelling or hearing. That virtually we're still the same as we were 4,000-5,000 years ago, and that is what is right now on the operating table of evolution, because we will not recognize what humanity becomes in the next century or two or three, assuming that we survive in some form and don't stupidly, you know, obliterate ourselves, which we obviously have the capability of. But the shift that we are at the front edge of is that big, and it's kind of like trying to figure out what your life is going to look like while you're being squeezed in the birth canal.
Okay. So, I couldn't have articulated that better. I had to just share that just so you could hear it for the ones that haven't. Most of you probably haven't had a chance to listen to that yet. So I'm going to do something a little different. What I'm curious about is where some of you are with this. So, okay, so I've unmuted everybody. What I want to do is open it up so that you can have a chance to articulate how that made you feel hearing that. I mean, that was a lot of, you may still need time to process it, but yeah, so what do you think about that mouthful of what he says that we're in right now? Anyone?
I feel it. I think it's totally true that we're, you know, right on the edge of some just incredible change.
Yeah.
The way I felt about his words was that he was put into words something that I don't have words for.
Yeah, that's why I had to play it for you guys, because I mean, I've said things like that before. I mean, I've talked about, you know, the alpha mega point of, you know, Aries is the beginning, Pisces is, you know, there's the ending, and I've talked about this. I mean, they've all talked about it, and we've not had this in a very long time. But I mean, to articulate the whole thing the way this puts it back. I mean, you're talking about, you know, over 6,000 years. And just from an astrological comprehension and understanding point, it really opens us up to a place of, God, what are we creating? And I don't remember if he, actually, I think I may have stopped it before part of some of what I heard, but they were talking about whether or not we're in like a simulation, if we're part of, you know, what's happening as an expression. And it kind of takes me into the point where I've gone into this several times in other calls. What is the the point of precipitation, where are you before you catch yourself going in and creating something? Where are you in the capacity to just be in a moment, and you're creating from pure cosmic source energy as an aspect of God, without having to be in reaction to everything in your world? Like Diana mentioned earlier, she's got these cats, and so she's in reaction. The mother instinct is to nurture, to take care of, and so you go into that heartfully, and that's a heartful instinct. And at what point do you care for the other, whatever the other is outside of you, to the point where it doesn't wear you out, where it doesn't feel like it's either become a burden or it becomes something where it just sucks your life force out? And I can attest to this. I mean, I'm right in it. I mean, I've got my dad, 2 great aunts, and there's been an acceleration in the last 6 or 7 weeks, with the one going into rehab, got her home, and I'm still having to attend all of this aging process, with individuals that are in declining, various declining stages of their physicality here, where the soul is here. It's still embodied. It's still doing. It's still trudging along. It's making decisions to, what am I going to eat today? What am I going to do? Am I going to watch some TV? It's like, for the energy they have. And of course, I've been observing this for years, with older people. And some people have vitality that's just, look at Jude. She was almost 85 when she passed away, but she still went as far as she could. My neighbor behind me, she's 87. She's like just a little dynamo. And she gets in her car and drives places. She visits family. She visits, just does everything. She doesn't look at life and say, I'm 87 years old. She wakes up every day and says, this is what I'm going to do today. It's like, and she and I were talking about this one day, and she said, she's got friends that are younger than her, people she's known for years, family. Just all sorts of people. We all have everybody in our lives. And what's the difference between, us making a choice to get up and make a phone call and arrange lunch, arrange dinner with someone, arrange an activity you go and do? At what point does the soul start to turn inward and no longer want to project itself out, engage with other humans, with other activities, animals, no matter what it is? We always have a conscious choice of engagement or not. And I have watched so many older people around me, just in my neighborhood, because there's several, where they slowly, it's almost like they go back into their own cocoon. It's like they slowly give up their life force. They slowly give up dominion, taking dominion over conscious choice points. And what are you going to do? And I feel like I'm in a place where I'm observing both. Like for myself, I can observe it and say, what am I going to do today? and I'm attending everybody else's attempt to attend their lives, while I'm also birthing something for myself, which is going to be this astrological stuff. I actually shared this spreadsheet that I've been doing with a couple of the employees at the gym. I went last night and was explaining some of it to them. They're like, wow, this is like amazing. I'm like, yeah. And I said, at some point should have get off the pot and put it out there. And the one guy, he said, I think when you send this to, this place in Zurich, Switzerland, he said, I think this is going to be a big deal. And I said, well, we'll see. And I really am almost there. And what's interesting, when I look at the astrology and I listen to what everybody says, this Mercury retrograde, all of those things are communication, but it's also happening on the core level of our emotional development. And that's individually and collectively. And when I was just kind of sitting here and letting Spirit talk to me about this today, yesterday a bit, and I just kind of got that, when you're looking at the emotional aspects of who we are, you've got the individual part, but there's also the part of who are you emoting in the oneness flow? Who are you as part of the human existence? Who are you part of cosmic existence? And, presenting something like this really would allow everyone, whoever looks at it and participates in pulling a chart through it, it's going to allow everybody to see themselves, experience themselves in a whole new way with regards to planets, the way that they see things move. I mean, it won't be. I mean, it's really no different informationally than the astrological wheel, but to see the whole sky charted out in one big long spreadsheet in the map, you see the paths of all the planets. You see the paths of everything. And it's more interactive as far as the capacity to perceive what's happening. And I say that for this reason. When Rick talks about, this Neptune-Saturn conjunction that's just happening, I mean, these things go out for years at a time in the way that they affect humanity as far as breaking apart the rigidification of who we are in a specific moment of time. And if you think about things in that way, we're all individually and collectively in our own box. We're in our own rigidification. We're in our own limitation. And are we in a place where the planets are lining up to remove or dissolve these invisible boxes that have been projected onto us, either by exterior, people, beliefs, whatever, but also through the genetic and ancestral inheritances. And when I've been going in and working with some of this stuff, and part of this takes me back to the whole 20 years with Jude, when she's going in and working with clients, almost every one of us on the call, had sessions with Jude in some extent, whether it's workshops or individual or retreats or what have you. But if you go back and look at your own body of work and the levels and layers of things you gave up, belief systems where you were stuck on something, oh, Jude, there's this and this and this with my family, or this with the business, or whatever it was. And she would go in and she would assist us each in releasing something that kept us in a tight restriction. And almost all of it's in the mind. Now, part of it is inherently in the cellular structure. It's part of the genetic inheritance. And most of us don't really have a clue what that means. Like energy that we've brought in from past lives, let's say, that's karmic, and we've had relationships that, we've recycled time after time after time. And we do that until we get the lesson. And so many people never get the big lesson. But we're not trained how to go in and feel into that and release it just as presence, because we're so busy running away from these stuck places in us, these places that have accumulated density, these places that create pain. And I mean, pain is an illusion. It's not real. We perceive the pain because of something that's there, and yet it's really not real. And one of the things that they had both mentioned was this idea. Actually, I think it was before I started. Rick said something about, well, what's real? What's real and what's not real? And they were talking about that a bit. And I think that's really kind of the biggest thing that this is taking us into, the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries. What's real and what's not real about our reality. And as we go in and observe whatever it is we're trying to still release, the more you go in and you realize, ooh, that's really not real, and you no longer carry it, it's amazing how easy it is to release something. And yet, if you have worked with Judith, there's so many times she would take us into things where, well, here's a curse here, or there's an implant here, there's a, whatever it is that created the densification or the the blockage in the world of form in the body. And you've got so many different levels and layers of that are just, we're like a big onion, through time and space, as we've lived all the lifetimes, as we've gone from point A to point B. We have 13 people on the call. That's so funny. We always get this. So I guess we're in that Christic energy again. So, it's like when you look at life in that way, then you say, okay, what's my next step? And really, it's just being in the moment. It's just through immediacy. So, let me go back to read again. Yeah, okay, that's quieter. So, so I realize that's taken us in a little bit different direction as far as observation and not necessarily astrological, which actually I think takes us more into the frequency that the calls, always used to be, like with you, because we would talk about the astrological stuff, and you don't want to become so stuck in the astrological system either. When I was explaining this stuff last night, I was showing them the differences between the tropical zodiac, which is what Western philosophy follows, as opposed to the sidereal adjusted zodiac, which basically moves all the signs about 27 degrees onto the other. Like Pisces is laid over Aries, Aries is laid over Taurus, Taurus is over Gemini. Or the actual sun lighting up, which actually gives the actual size of the constellations. Like Pisces is a 40-degree sign, Aries is more of like a 20-degree, because they're not all equal signs as far as size when the sun's lighting everything up. I don't know what comes first. I don't know if the distortion that we are living here in the world of form comes from the different sizes of the constellations. I don't know if the distortion comes because of the way we're interpreting the way that the different angles and everything falls in our own birth charts and the progress charts when things come up. I mean, it really does bring in more questions than sometimes you get answers for. At the same time, when I listen to, astrologers that have been doing this for, 40 and 50 years, and they're articulating big picture dynamics of what we're going through and enduring, most of those things feel pretty accurate. Then I go back into my training with Judith, just shamanically, as pure awareness. So it's like you release your mind, you release all the mental capacities to project a value and interpret something based on this whole big system of astrology. And you just go in and you feel into what's the truth. And, so I mean, that's kind of going into like, the Krishnamurtis, it's going into Adyashantis, it's going into, Eckhart Tolle. I mean, anyone that's gone through one of those life experiences where their perception of reality got blown apart through the deep rigidification of structures in their lives that disintegrated like immediately. Now, sometimes that happens because they go through either what people, I guess, project a value as a mental breakdown, which can be true. Like if you become so mental about your life and you're not deeply immersed in emoting, if you're not emotionally perceiving through the heart, through your cosmic heart of God, you're perceiving the vastness of what's happening in the world. If you're stuck in the mind, sometimes we do create a place where our reality absolutely shatters. It completely goes through such a disintegration, and it takes then, of course, whoever the subject is, into a deep night of the soul. And that can happen for a myriad of circumstances. Sometimes it's happening because they are going down really not so great paths. And so their soul and spirit brought this moment into them as a huge wake-up call. And a lot of people do. They shift the totality of the way they create their lives, and they participate in the world of form in a completely different way, because they've been humbled to a point where they realize they have no control. And really, this all really does come down to control and our perception of control, what we think we can control, and what's the part of us that's actually being moved by spirit. And if we're here as divine presence and we're just literally being moved through a calling, through a heart movement, a flow, as it were, and we have our own specific frequency in which we flow and participate in the greater whole. And I mentioned earlier, that this has been a frequency war, and I've talked about this many times. It really is a frequency war, and we've been controlled and manipulated so long, well, at least 100 years, by Hollywood, through the movies, television, music. I mean, you used to could add newspaper, magazines, the written stuff. Written stuff has been taken over by online through the internet world. It's still written, it's there, but you don't know who's doing the writing anymore. You used to have a chain of custody of things, being written, like an editor or, writers would submit things in. But these days, if it's on the internet, it doesn't mean a human being's writing it anymore. And I mean, literally, if you've seen this, almost every time you do a search on any search engine, it says, this answer is an AI. And so you have the computer, you've got the internet now alive, and it's creating answers based on the information that's been fed into it and tracked on these huge super servers by human input. And what's interesting about it, I have done a lot of research with things, and it's amazing how quick responses can come up through the AI response. And interestingly enough, when I check the accuracy of the answers, and some of these are pretty amazing, especially through the astrological things that I ask questions about, the succinct clarity in which the AI is answering is amazing. It's astounding. I'm floored. But it still puts us in this place, though, of are we in a place where we're deferring to a computer to give us answers to questions? And at what point do we turn our sovereignty of our mental capacity over to a computer, and we trust that to give us information? And at some point in the future, do we get to a place where we rely so much on the machine that the machine starts giving us false data, and then we end up in some other place because we've given up sovereignty of our own thoughts? It's a very interesting space to be. And I see both sides of it. It's just like everything else, it's a duality. There's some really amazing things. There are technologies that are making huge leaps and bounds. And again, this is based in, or it can be observed through the astrology. All of the outer planets have changed signs this year. You have Pluto that went into Aquarius a couple of years ago. Neptune and Saturn have gone into Aries. Neptune for 160 years, Saturn for a 29-year pattern. Pluto's a 248-year stint through the whole internet. And it's usually a 20-year cycle through signs. Uranus now just going into Gemini. Gemini is ruling communication. It rules airplanes, air travel, anything that's, computer electronically oriented. I mean, that's AI. And for Uranus to be in there, it's shocking revelations. It's lightning fast communications. I mean, Uranus really is a higher octave of Mercury in some ways. And so it's activating like all that stuff. And additionally, we've also got Chiron that has, just as of the 19th, I think, it moved from Aries into Taurus. It's only going to be in Taurus through, I think, September 17th. So, I mean, it's just going to stay on that first degree of Taurus, but it's going to take us into a different perception of wounding. It's wounding around money, wounding around anything we value. So it's been in the I am presence since 2018 in Aries. It's interesting that it changes signs as it's gone through and worked with our presence since 2018, and now, Neptune and Saturn are working with a newly healed, supposedly, I am presence, if Chiron did its job with each of us. And again, there's supposedly 8 billion people out there. Did everybody get healed? As far as I have a right to be here. I don't know if they did or not. I can honestly say from the people I've seen out in the world, not everybody got healed. And again, everybody's got different, birth charts. Everyone came here to experience different things. Everyone's genetic and ancestral inheritance is absolutely unique based on all the lifetimes that are lived and choice points that are made within those lifetimes. So then you have that dynamic. The other thing that's about to happen in July is this configuration. I meant to do some research and pull it and send it, I forgot. A couple of people articulated about it. Kathy Beale had done a video. It's called Barbeau's Basket. And it's where there's a configuration that's coming in place for all these planets that have just moved into the early degrees of signs. And they're all going to lock in at basically around 4 degrees of the signs. So you've got Neptune there. Uranus has moved into it. Pluto is there. What was the other one? Saturn's at like 12 of Aries. What was the other one? Uranus, Neptune. I forget now. Anyway, and it was being activated, I think, maybe with Venus being the handle or Mercury. One of those was the handle. Anyway, the point is, a lot of astrologers have written about this for a long time, saying that July of 2026 was going to be a huge moment of time where it was creating a dynamic that was going to shift humanity. It was creating, I guess, a bowl, maybe, like where you would. There's different ways different people interpret it, but it's almost like a bowl of consciousness. It's a completely different way of initiating the way we perceive ourselves in reality. And if you look at the way that all these things have shifted and changed, and again, these things won't necessarily mean anything to a lot of people on the planet because they don't follow astrology, they don't understand the way that those things work, the interpretations. If you do understand it and you're conscious and you're doing conscious work in your own life to make better choices, to break yourself free from entanglements, soul contracts that you really, they've lived their purpose. And that's the other reason I say that this is probably the most important time period we're coming into, because and that's what this Mercury retrograde is doing. The Mercury retrograde is Cancer. It's the emotional expression of who we are, which is all about relationships. Now, Libra is more about relationships, but Cancer is the way we feel into what is correct for us. As Mercury retrogrades, and it turned retrograde today on this Capricorn moon, it's going to continue to. Let me see. Let me pull up. Where's the? Okay. All right, here it is. I wanted to just pull it up just to remind myself. Venus just went through Cancer, and so it's gone into Leo. And so Venus is how we perceive things, what we value, all these things. And in Leo, it's kind of like the king is who are we? And it's reactivating a way of how we love what we perceive in the world. Jupiter is about to go in. Well, actually, it went in today on the 29th. So Jupiter going to Leo is now going to blow up all of that. That's going to be about a year process, a 13-month process. And Jupiter is going to go all the way across the sign of Leo to about 27 degrees by about December 12th. And it turns to go retrograde. And that's going to come back over everything in Leo. So if you have anything in Leo, Jupiter is going to expand it. That can be good expansion, it can be bad expansion. And it's really not bad or good because that doesn't really exist. But if you're in a place where you're stuck, the expansion and contraction that you'll experience in that can really move you. Now, if you've got squares to those expansions in the other signs, or if you have trines, which is flowing energy, or sextiles, which are opportunities to shift things, or even an opposition, if you had things in Aquarius, Jupiter's going to be in an opposition expansion to that. You could also have fingers of God, which are the quincunxes and sextile combinations that create faded moments, like these things that feel like fingers of God that created a change, a shift. And if Jupiter's aspecting those things, you can create a lot of change really fast. But the main thing with this Mercury retrograde, though, it's taking us back into the core of who we are. And the other thing, I mentioned this, I think, a couple of the calls, but it's worth repeating here. Hygeia and Psyche are both kind of, Hygeia is more about, I think, like hygiene, Hygeia, but it's very methodical health. And Psyche is a higher octave of Venus. And both of those are conjunct Mercury right now as it's gone retrograde. So we're being asked to go on an inward journey with our highest female expression through Venus, but also with Hygeia, which is health. So we're reevaluating how we perceive ourselves in house and home dynamics with Cancer. Jupiter has just left today, so this dynamic is going to continue to go. Now, when the sun comes across, it's going to come across on July the 12th and meet back up with Mercury right before it creates a new moon with the sun in Cancer which will be the next moon cycle we do July the 14th. And it's at 22 degrees of Cancer. And 22 is a master number, but the sun will have just gone over the Mercury retrograde. So it's going to communicate with us, and the sun is going to be lighting up anything it's gotten so far on the Mercury retrograde path. So in this, redo, rewind, everything else, the new moon that's created will assist us in creating from a space of review. So if you're in a place where you still have some things to release, let go, whatever else, that new moon, I think, is going to help us create a sub-point new space. Obviously, I don't think it's the new beginning until later in the year, but because Mercury is still in retrograde. But the other thing that's going to happen then is that when Mercury stations direct, it stations direct on the 23rd, but it literally stays on the 16th degree of Cancer for over a week. It's at 17 degrees for 2 days before, and it's at 17 degrees for 3 days after. So all the way from the 18th to the 29th, that's 11 days. It's within a degree or two. For Mercury to just stay at a point, and this is the midpoint of Cancer, it's also close to the Sirius star system. So I would say that we're being downloaded by, Sirian type intelligence, cosmic downloads from that particular star system. And I mean, Sirius, basically, I think represents a lot of higher awareness for humans. And so I think that Mercury retrograde coming onto that point and stationing direct from that is going to be participative in reacclimating the individual and collective human mind in Cancer and how we feel going forward. It's another reason why I think that this is a major retrograde time period. The other thing that's happening is it's going over Pollux and Procyon, which are the twins that are technically in Gemini. Now, I've talked about that before, where the sun lights up Gemini, Procyon and Pollux are at the end of Gemini, not at the end of Cancer. But from the astrological interpretations in Western astrology with the tropical zodiac, they're functioning in Cancer. But they really are the twins in Gemini. So to me, that would represent, if you look at both interpretations, it's retrograding over two aspects of self and how we perceive ourselves as ourselves, but also the other. Or it could be shadow self and the projected self. So for all of those reasons, I think this is a really powerful Mercury retrograde. Let me see. I thought there was something else I was going to point out with that. Actually, there was. Let me go into. I'm going to the trining energies first to talk about the energies that are working together. So this full moon in Capricorn is happening at 8 degrees of Cancer. 8 would represent the infinite. The sun is actually in Cancer, but the moon is actually in Capricorn. So it's an opposition point that's being created. But when you look at the sun has just come across the beginning of Cancer, which meant it trined the north node. The north node, which is in Pisces. That's the other thing I wanted to mention too. The nodes have been going backwards for the last year and a half. They spend a year and a half in a sign, and they always go backwards. And so it's almost like we're going in a reverse direction with regards to our evolution, which is bizarre to me, but it's the way it functions. And the nodes are going to change signs on July the 27th. That's the other big shift that's taking us into a different level of awareness, because the north node is going to go from Pisces into Aquarius. And so, of course, you got this Aquarius thing again. And, of course, it always starts at the 29th degree and goes backwards. So the north node, I think, when it goes to the 27th, is going to really bring about huge changes for humanity as it does that. The south node then, of course, is in Virgo, and it's going to go into Leo when it shifts. That's going to be a big change. South node representing past life, karmic experiences, all these things. As it goes into Leo, and it's going backwards, and it goes on, when it hits the 29th degree, I think at the end of July, going into August, you're going to see, because it is South Node, I think there's going to be a lot of toppling of kings, bigger, people, objects, the way things operate. We'll see what happens there. The other part to this, and I think I mentioned this on the last call, this retrograde, as it goes through between 16 and 26 degrees of Cancer, it is trining over the Narcissus retrograde Centaur. So you're going to have a review of narcissistic personalities, but because it's trining, I think it's going to be a positive thing. It's also, all of that's trining the Nessus retrograde, which is abuse cycles of Centaur, and also Taranahai Wako, which we've talked about before. Pam Gregory's talked about that a lot. It's a lot of transformational energy. And those things are working together to create something new and different. And all of that's water trines. The other thing that I'll mention with this too, the next moon, the new moon on July the 14th, when we do the next telecall, is going to be trining retrograde Nessus. So to me, what that's going to mean is that there can be new expressions in how we feel with regards to reviewing abuse patterns. These are very active energies that are happening for everyone, individually and collectively. The other thing with that too is Narcissus is also there. So any narcissistic or abuse, the fact that these things are very close together in trine says that we're working with these patterns for really the rest of the year. Well, actually, no, not the rest of the year, because Narcissus turns direct on the 4th of August, but Nessus is still going retrograde. So narcissistic stuff will shift before the eclipses come up in August. Anyway, so that's one aspect, is positive energies with regards to that. As far as sextiling energies, which are opportunity aspects for shifting, the way we work with reality. Cancer, where are we at here? Yeah, so the Sun in Cancer creating the full moon in Capricorn in the retrograde with Mercury. There's not a lot happening in Taurus, except for the fact that this retrograde here on the 29th is at 26 degrees. That is sextiling Algol. And Algol is, the demon star, as they call it, Medusa head, and sometimes you have politicians losing their heads and things like that. This isn't a detrimental aspect though, but Mercury retrograde is stationed retrograde literally on Algol. Sextiling to Algol. So what that would mean to me is that Mercury taking us on an individual and collective journey back into the heart level may activate an observation today of where we see things and perceive things on the emotional level with people that may lose their heads or fall out of favor. Those things may go up for review, and that will be in review all the way through August. It won't be until August the 6th or 7th when it comes back to this point of sextiling Algol again. So I think we're going to have 2 months of reviewing people that, we may say, should this person really lose their head or should they lose their jobs? So like you have a Keir Starmer that's now, decided he finally had to leave as Prime Minister of Great Britain. You could have other people losing their heads, but by choice. And part of it, too, if individually and collectively we're all going back into our heart centers deeper, it could be the catalyst that creates those dissolutions. Let me see. So Virgo being on the other side of Cancer, there's really not a lot there. It's sextiling my Pluto and Uranus, so that's positive aspects with what I'm doing. And it may be the reason that I also go ahead and release this, what I'm doing out into the world. As far as other energies, you have Cancer and Capricorn are squaring the Aries-Libra axis. So this is kind of creating, let me pull it forward from May into June. The Mercury retrograde is squaring right now exactly Eris, that is in Aries. Eris creates discord. Eris takes us into our own perception of discord with our life, the world, whatever it is. And it's going to retrograde on the 22nd of July. So it's coming up, and we're going to be doing a reverse course in Eris. But right now, the Mercury retrograde is conjunct that Eris and going over it with this moon. So it is being activated. So imagine you have discord squaring, creating tension with Psyche and Hygeia and Mercury on top of each other in Cancer. So you've got an I am presence that has some discord that's working with how we have a higher perception of ourselves in communication with higher health expression in a way. As Mercury does go retrograde, it will go over Pallas Athena and Vesta as it comes back over. It will get close to Saturn within a couple of degrees by the 21st, and it's basically going to be sitting within a degree to 2 degrees for that whole week. Mercury is going to go direct on the 23rd of July. Saturn goes direct on the it starts retrograde on the 26th. So as Mercury is sitting there next to Saturn, it's creating, and this is squaring. So it's going to take us on a communication review of how we want structures to exist in our life with our own I am presence. Again, individually and collectively. And as Mercury turns direct, it's going to be direct for 3 days before Saturn then goes retrograde. So there will be communication directly with Saturn as we go into a review of structures in the Aries I am presence. And so, I don't think that's a mistake. I think that's it's a dynamic that's creating almost like a baton effect. The fact that Mercury is giving us a review in our emotional body, and Saturn is about to give us a review of the first part of this year of moving forward, creating these structures in our dreams. And Neptune will go retrograde on the 7th. So it's going to already take us in a review of how we dream, what our delusions and aspirations. Both sides again, of course. So really, that's the other part, I think, of July that, to me, I think that's a big deal. Mercury squaring Saturn and our very existence of how we're restructuring our lives. So let me see. The other part to that, Mercury retrograde will go over Eros, which is the higher expression of male. It's more male erotic love, but it's a higher expression of Mars, where Psyche is the higher expression of Venus. And Mercury direct will go over that and then catch back up to it in the middle of August, going into the eclipse season. Yeah. The other part to this that is interesting is I've talked about this before with regards to oscillating Lilith. And oscillating Lilith, has been going back and forth between Scorpio and Sagittarius, and it has been making its way into Capricorn. And over the next 2 weeks, starting on the 1st, going to the 2nd, coming out in a couple days, Lilith is going to go into Capricorn. And it's going to go over the point of this moon in 3 days. And it's going to go all the way to 15 degrees of Capricorn, which is the midpoint before retrograding. So it's going to go back and forth over the beginning of Capricorn points, which is also creating an opposition to Cancer points. That is the highest octave of the divine feminine expression, is the way I've always talked about it. The other thing that's happening is that this moon sitting at 8 Capricorn, I've not really talked about the moon as much because I've been talking about the sun over in Cancer, but I looked this up last night on the internet because I was just curious how the AI was going to interpret it. But Ixion is one of the dwarf planets that's sitting right on this moon, and it's retrograde. Quorar is another dwarf planet that's retrograde. It's 2.5 degrees in front. Pholus is a centaur, and it's sitting on top of Quorar, also retrograde. 3 trans-Neptunian objects that are literally right here conjunct this moon, and they're going retrograde. All 3 of them are being aspected by the oscillating Lilith retrograde path. Why this is important, and let me go pull up my pulls from this. So when I do the search of Capricorn full moon with Ixion, Quorar, and Pholus retrograding, it's interesting again how AI comes up with this, but it really feels very true. So it says the Capricorn full moon in 2026 will be a high energy, soul aligned event, especially if it conjuncts Ixion, Quorar, and Pholus, all of which are considered higher dimensional or 5D planetary bodies in esoteric astrology. These conjunctions are amplifying themes of soul mission, expansion, and transformation. So when you just look at, Capricorn full moons is what they are. You've got pragmatic discipline, structure, long-term vision, and the full moon marks a threshold of reviewing and reworking all these things. When you look at the dwarf planets and the way each one affects it, so the definition it gives for Ixion is linking it to the promise your soul made when entering this lifetime. I'd never seen that worded in that way before, but I think it's probably very accurate. It's a reminder of your mission and the commitments you made. So that's interesting. Quorar is seen as the higher octaves of Mercury, channeling expansive, innovative thought from a 5D perspective. Pholus is a minor planet associated with sudden insight, transformation, and the breaking of old patterns. So all 3 of those items are sitting here at this moon, and they're all retrograde. So this thing goes on to explain the rest of this in context. When it talks about the moon in Capricorn, it talks about the energy can be divine plus emotional. And then the retrograde influence is that retrogrades are re-examination, revisiting old patterns, deepening understanding of past experiences. So in this context, it says the retrogrades of these 5D bodies means re-engaging with your soul mission, redefining your vision, refining it, and integrating higher dimensional insights into daily life. The retrogrades also slow down, reverse the processes, so the moon is actually more or less a time to pause and reflect and realign before moving forward, because you can't really move forward with things in retrograde pathways. So practical guidance it talks about is, bridging Capricorn's discipline with Cancer's emotional depth, and we already talked about, that type of dynamic. But letting Ixion's mission and Quorar's innovation guide your Capricorn goals. You can think long-term, but fresh, expansive ideas. Pholus retrograde is breaking through mental and emotional blocks, especially if you're stuck in old patterns. And then, of course, it talks about Neptune's influences, as if it's in Pisces, because it can soften and amplify emotional responses. I guess it brings Neptune into it from the fact that we're in this whole new cycle. Anyway, but I found that very interesting that AI would word all of that, pretty succinctly and clearly, and I think it's all very accurate. And the fact, I don't think it's an accident that this particular moon comes exact right there with those three items in Capricorn. And on top of that, I did not add this in for the AI interpretation, but oscillating Lilith is going back and forth over that. So it brings even higher octave of higher divine feminine energy to bring more awareness even above that. So that's a lot of energy shifting right there. And all of that is that energy in Capricorn is in opposition to everything happening in Cancer. So it creates a big dichotomous dynamic with everything. So let me see. I thought there was something else I wanted to hit with that. Where are we at? Oh, the opposition I've already talked about. I know what I was going to go into was the quincunxes. Okay. So with regards to fingers of God, those are where you have the 150-degree angle to a point, whatever's happening at that particular point in that sign. Like Cancer, if Cancer's the finger of God point, then you have Aquarius on one end, Sagittarius on the other, that are sextiling, working together in opportunity aspects. But the point energy is lighting up whatever's in Capricorn. Now, when you look at, just to remind you, on the 8th of June, we had Venus meet up with Jupiter, which happens, every year. But when it did it in Cancer. And so it created the capacity for, what you love to get expanded. And when it's in Cancer, the emotional center, it could have created a lot of nice positive openings, for things that you love and value and want to create. The other part to that is, okay, so as Mercury's coming across all of this, oscillating Lilith has been going backwards this month, all the way through the 22nd when it turned direct in Sagittarius. The reason that is important is because on, let me see, 18th, 19th, around the 15th to the 16th of June, oscillating Lilith going backwards through Sagittarius had just gone through the galactic center and met up with the great attractor on the 17th. So in between those days, you had the highest divine feminine expression conjuncting Mercury as it was going direct before this retrograde. And anytime you have cosmic points, I think, being hit and added in, I think it continues to assist us in waking up. Those are quincunxing energies, which means that they're creating movement. It's almost like they're forcing an energy to happen. So the fact you've got, two cosmic things with Lilith that's aspecting, Mercury, and it does it again when it goes back when Lilith goes back retrograde. It's going to cross back over the Great Attractor, cross over the galactic center, while it's also aspecting Mercury, and it does all that right before Mercury. Well, almost all of it before Mercury goes direct today. So it got infused with cosmic energy before the retrograde happened. While it's still retrograde, oscillating Lilith is going to come back over those points again on July the 18th. And it goes in and it stations to go direct literally right before the Great Attractor. It doesn't meet up with the Great Attractor again, but it goes over the galactic center. So when it does that, it's going to do it at 17 degrees, which is the same degree Mercury is stationing at for almost 11 days. And you're going to have oscillating Lilith in quincunx energy, again, that's creating necessary adjustment and movement, creating a finger of God with Mercury as the point aspect. So, again, I'm not a professional astrologer, but it's almost like we're being infused, Mercury's being infused in Cancer with a lot of cosmic, higher divine feminine energy. At the same time that's happening, the North Node will have moved into Aquarius at 29 degrees. So what it's doing, the North Node is where we're going individually and collectively. It's creating a whole new pattern for humanity, which is Aquarius. It will then be aspected by Mercury by the end of August, and then it'll get a shot with the galactic center, though, from the moment it moves in on the 26th of July. The North Node is going to be in a sextile with the galactic center, which is the center of the Milky Way. And that's going to be a working sextile for weeks. Let me see. It's going to be there all the way through November. I mean, within a 2-degree orb. So that means we're having cosmic information given to us for our path forward, if you interpret it in that particular way. It will also be hit with the path of oscillating Lilith coming back and forth over the galactic center and accessing that node for the rest of the year. So that's the other reason I see the rest of 2026 being a major move forward in people waking up to life purposes, waking up to their own realities. That's the other reason that these eclipses coming up August the 12th through the 27th are also going to be big shifts, because the North Node will have already gone into Aquarius, creating our new realities, from that standpoint. This has been a lot. I never plan any of these things. I go through the chart and I go wherever Spirit takes me to go with these things. So, yeah. But so as far as this Cancer retrograde, where it's at is the point of the finger of God. I think it's being activated by the cosmic points over in Sagittarius, more so than anything. Again, there's not a lot in Aquarius until the end of July, when the North Node starts working with the galactic center through sextiling and creating opportunity aspects. So, yeah, there's that. The other thing that's also happening in Aquarius is the fact that Juno is retrograding back over Pluto again, which is going to take us back into huge relationship transformation energies. And that really starts this next week. Juno will be within 2 or 3 degrees of it within the first week of July, within a week from now. So we're going to be in huge relationship transformations, and that is going to happen all the way through. At least Juno actually goes out of Aquarius and back into Capricorn on actually during the eclipse energy. So the eclipses, from that standpoint, it's Juno retrograde, Pluto retrograde. It could actually eclipse people out of your life. If you are in a relationship that isn't working very well, Pluto is transformation, death, and rebirth. Juno is sitting there right next to it. And it actually goes out on the first eclipse. Juno does, out of Aquarius. So that's actually a new moon. The first eclipse is in 20 degrees of Leo. The opposition point happens to be in Aquarius. It's not next to Juno and Pluto, but I could absolutely see a lot of transformational reworking with. It's not just personal relationships; it's relationships to everything. It could be marriages between countries. It could be groups of people interacting with each other. It's all of the above. But the fact that the new moon, the opposition point to that, is in Aquarius, I think it's going to shift a lot. And the North Node, again, has just gone backwards at 29 degrees. So that's an anaretic degree. We'll see. We'll just have to see what happens. At the same time, Mars enters Cancer. Oof. I didn't see that. So, yeah, Mars and Ceres both just enter Cancer on that first eclipse. And then Juno is exactly in a quincunx to those. So, yeah, you've got action points and nurturing together, which is a weird combination. Yeah, we'll see how that. I don't know how to interpret that. Anyway, the eclipses are going to be really big points of shift and change. Let me see. So the other part, Cancer. Where is? I'm finding the other. Okay, it must be the other way. Cancer. Oh shoot. No. Oh, don't move sheets. Please don't move that. Okay, now the program has gone into a weird thing. Okay, I'm going to close it and let it reopen. Okay, well, I think I've maximized everything I wanted to go into now that I've crashed. That's nice. Hello, Mercury Retrograde. So, okay, I'll let it reopen itself. I mean, it's 9:30. I mean, I've gone through most everything that I wanted to astrologically, but the point is, a lot of energy is shifting. A lot of things are moving. It's moving us consciously or unconsciously into new realities for ourselves. And depending on where you are and your conscious choices that you're making, I think this will affect you uniquely based on your own reflections and where you are. And I hope this is. I didn't really track myself as I was going through. I just went as Spirit took me, and it's like I just went. And it's like, okay. Now that I'm through it all, it's like, what just happened? I go into la la land sometimes when I get taken over by these things. So yeah. So I hope that has been helpful in giving you perspective and where we are with stuff right now. And again, I mean, like with what Rick was telling Emilio in the beginning of of their video, I think it's like an hour and 30 minutes or something. It's like a big long thing. And goodness knows where they go in that conversation. I mean, I imagine they go pretty deep. Rick usually does. but it's a sign of the times of where we're at as far as potentiality. And again, you can only go to the depth that your soul is open to go into. I mean, we can listen to people articulate these types of things, but if your soul is not in a place to receive it or perceive it, what someone else gives, and articulates, to be able to take that in context for ourselves in a workable way is sometimes, not always immediate. And I do think that our souls have the capacity to hear things, even though we don't understand them sometimes. It's still going into the DNA. It's like Jude's always said with these, calls. Light language just goes through, and whether you're understanding it or not, the soul always knows. The soul is eternal. So even though you may not have a conscious shift of something, on a cellular level, you're being shifted. And I think that's always true for all of us. So it's kind of like whatever we're putting in, junk in equals junk out. So if you're listening to things that are lower vibrational frequency, I've always talked about everything's frequency. So if you're watching movies, TV, listening to music, whatever, if it's lower vibration, it's going to keep you in those lower frequencies. The more you give up those things and do more higher vibrational frequency things, then that's, where you're going to be creating. And, So on that note, let's get still and we can go in and do our deep meditation work and assist each other in dropping additional lower frequency stuff, which is always nice. That's one thing I really appreciate about these calls is that I really feel like we all support each other on a very deep level when we're doing all this. And again, there's never any separation with anything. So depending on where you are individually, whether you know that you're offering healing to somebody else or you're assisting in something, I assure you are doing it. One more light there. Okay. I wish I could just have it where it was easy to go from one space to the other, but it never is. Okay, spreadsheet loaded back up, but I don't need this right now. The other thing that I want to talk about just shortly, it's a really good time to examine food sources, nutrition, what you're putting in your body, how you are partnering with your cellular structure to keep yourself in the healthiest, highest function. And I know sometimes it's not always the easiest thing to do. I have been using a lot of these now vitamins. I'm using an Atom vitamin, which is like the male multivitamin, but they really use higher doses of vitamins when they're doing things, because most people I've been reading lately, the minimal doses like the FDA and stuff like that, they're really too low for what the body needs. And almost everyone, as we go through the aging process, are deficient on most nutrients and vitamins. And I'm not saying go take, everything you get a hold of, but I had already done blood work and lab work for things. I knew I was deficient on a lot of things, but vitamin D3 with a K2 is very important. Most people are very deficient on that. The other thing is NAC, NAC is very important and vital. I mean, a lot of the doses are like only 600 milligrams, but a lot of people, if you need to do a lot of cellular rework and antioxidant work, people are taking as much as 1,200 to 1,800, like three 600 milligram pills of that. Space it out over time. That one's really important. I've been taking omega-3 fish oils, been taking 1,000 milligram krill oil, and make sure you're sourcing these things pretty good. But the other thing that I have found is called Terra Health Essentials, and it basically I've been getting a 4-pack bundle, and it's liposomal, which basically means it's carried through a fluid suspension to get it through the digestive system and into the bloodstream and in your body. But it's basically liposomal glutathione, it's curcumin, it's a D3K2, as well as a B12 complex. And it's really made a huge difference. I mean, all of these things together really have made a big difference. I'm also taking a Native Path collagen. Chad Walding is, I guess, one of the co-founders of the company. I met him through David Wilcock, of all things, back years ago. But those collagens can really help. I'm taking a mushroom coffee, that Rise coffee. So 6 different mushrooms in the coffee. It's like, all of these things together have really helped me rehabilitate my internal cellular structure. And I didn't realize how depleted I had become. But, so just looking at simple little things like that can make a really big difference for you. And if you've lost, a lot of your pizzazz and, energy levels, and of course women, are in, different hormonal shifts, of course. But whether you're male or female, most of our hormones are being shot in today's world because of all the things that are happening chemically, that are just affecting, our cellular structures. So I just wanted to put that out there. And do get plenty of water, and do try to use, like, I've got just a Brita pitcher that has the filter built into it, and just change the filter out. But if you're filtering the water, you're going to get a much better frequency. If you can really work with the water to maintain a higher frequency and standard, like Masaru Emoto used to talk about. He was like water master from Japan. But they talked about, if you, write love and all these wonderful things on water, the structure, the crystalline structure actually presents itself in a much higher frequency, as opposed to, if you put hate and anger and all these kind of projections into it. People want to say that those things don't matter. They absolutely matter. Your state of mind matters. Your whole core expression really does create your reality. So if you're in any place where you're still, either sad, something's still not processed, this is a full moon. Full moons are for releasing. This is Capricorn Cancer axis. Cancer is all about the emotional body. Capricorn is the structure. This is a perfect moon to release anything additionally that you're sitting with, or if there's anything you want to ask on behalf of family, friends, what have you. And of course, we don't want to ask too specifically of anything. I always feel like, the best way to assist with any of that is just to ask for the highest potentiality of the soul's progression at that moment of time. I keep it very open-ended because, again, we don't want to project a value onto something we don't know or understand. So many times we can be thinking that we're assisting something, but we're creating a more complex dynamic, or we're really not assisting a change in its highest capacity, because we create limitation when we project a limitation on it. And the other thing too, I've got one of my friends in Mount Shasta that always posts things, and he's always talking about spelling, and there's so many insidious ways that, especially the English language, is composed, where like if you break down phonetically words, all the meanings totally change, and we don't think about it, in that sense. It's like, well, like for instance, today he had shared, words are spells. Thyself is a word, but like individual, you have in, divine, and dual. In, divi, dual, individual. Thyself is in a divine, in the divine and in duality. So it's like it splits it up. Television, I'm sure many of you have heard this one. Tell, a lie, and a vision. And it's broadcasted. So you're broadcasting the spell. News is north, south, east, and west, but where is it broadcasted? It's like, I don't know, good morning. I've thought about this before, subconsciously or not, but says, is it a good morn? Is this how thyself knows, wants to start the day? Are you going to start mourning yourself? There's so many contradictions in the English language. Like hello, hell, and oh. Oh, hell. Are you invoking hell in your greetings? But you don't think about it because we're so conditioned from birth to say, oh, this is the way it should be. And then another way you put it was like awake. Where does one go when someone dies? You go to awake. I don't know. Who knows? The point is, we don't really, unless you go back to the core beginning of where word comes from, the whole etymology, but we really don't understand, how our language came about and what the meanings were when they came into inception. And hence the other reason to really sit with things when you're in precipitation before creation. And I think that's, I've mentioned this on several times in other calls, that it really is always a place to go back. Beginner's mind, beginner's heart, go into the precipitation before, creating something. And that will keep you in a place, hopefully, where you're not creating false reality or lower frequency creations that you're going to have to deal with either karmic repercussions in, or have to clear up or clean something up later. So, okay, I didn't mean to go on that whole side note. Okay. I mean, it's all meant to be, obviously, if it's presented through. So, okay, here, gosh, 9:45. Again, I hope this hasn't been too much. We still have the 13th, so we're going into meditation at a 13 frequency, which is awesome. And I'll just say thank you all in advance for who have come. I know a couple people said they may have to go earlier, but I hope you can stay for the meditation just to try to get yourself shifted and in the highest frequency possible for going into this moon and releasing and going into our next creations with the next moon cycle. So, again, even though I may not articulate it like I've done in other sessions, just still imagine your whole, every aspect of your body, the emotional, mental, spiritual, and of course physicality, going in line with the etheric blueprint, but also in the sub-levels, the atomic and subatomic levels, going into the skeletal systems, going into the blood, going into myofascial systems that carry all of the electrical impulses through the muscular system, through the brain, the lymphatic systems, the parasympathetic, the sympathetic systems, the skeletal system, if I didn't say that, I don't remember. All the organs. I mean, imagine all of these different places within physicality, and just imagine that we're clearing out anything that's left that we haven't transmuted up to this point. And I always say that because, I mean, in between the calls, we're still living and we're still creating many times in the density, so we can still end up with densification that still builds right back up. It's a constant process. I mean, as long as we're in a living form, we're still, in a place where we succumb to the distortion patterns, or we're living in environments where those things get projected onto us. And it's hard to just be here but not take on, a lot of those other frequencies and things. So anyway, as we go in, I mean, just imagine that you're clearing all of these systems again. So, yeah. Okay. Happy travels. Let's go in. Okay, everyone. I just want to thank everybody who's left for being on. Next, we'll go ahead and stop recording.